Welcome back, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on which part of the world you're watching from. We're back for more Crimson Desert. However, as Crimson Desert continues to eat away at my hard drive with its casual updates, which of course are always welcome, you know, I was just making a joke. I thought it would be a good idea to check out some of the news coming out of Final Fantasy VII Remake. What else, of course? I know we've been talking about it casually here and there, but I thought it would be good to actually take a look at some of the recent interviews he's done. So that's what we're going to do. And boy, has he been giving a lot of interviews. So he's been talking a lot about, you know, not just how Rebirth is being integrated and how they developed Rebirth for Part 2, but he's been talking a lot about Part 3 as well. As, you know, the clock runs backward, the timer runs out for the unveiling, for the major unveiling, and there's a lot of things that we need to talk about. Like, we usually just skim through it during the first part of the stream, but there's things that I actually want to go in depth right now because I'm having some thoughts. I'm having some thoughts that are getting me excited about Part 3, and I want to share them. Like, I don't know. This is something that I'm thinking about. Let me just make my microphone a little bit louder because I noticed that it was a bit too low last time. But yeah, and these are some things that we definitely need to talk about. So as our intro song comes to an end, let's switch to, is it this screen? I don't know, I haven't done it for a while. Is it this screen? Yep, this is the screen. Hello everyone, how's it going? My hair is a mess, apologies for that. All right, so let's start from here. Let's start from Twitter. Let's go back. And, well, I think that the biggest take is this one. Which was essentially updated on Twitter about 35 minutes ago, as it says here. And it says that as director of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and the upcoming third installment, Naoki Hamaguchi shared in a Nintendo Life interview that he's already finished over 40 playthroughs of the game's final chapter, and by final chapter we mean Part 3. He's expressed excitement about the advanced progress and the team's hard work to deliver an unforgettable experience. Square Enix plans a 2027 release to cap the trilogy on the original game's 30th anniversary, with recent Switch 2 ports of Remake, Integrate, and Rebirth keeping momentum high. Now, I mean, okay, yeah, cool. So we've got the Nintendo Life. Do we have the Nintendo Life interview? Hi there, Andy Fanti. Oh, did I wake you up? I think I woke you up. Anyway, do we have that? We have a Nintendo Everything interview. All right, let's chuck that out. Here it is. All right, we'll open this and we'll start with this. So let's check it out. Let's go right through it. So, Final Fantasy VII Director has already completed over 40 playthroughs of the third game. Completed it, mate. All right, let's read it, and we'll sort of maybe analyze it as we go through it. Now, Final Fantasy VII fans are eagerly awaiting news on the upcoming final installment in the remake trilogy. But if you're worried or anxious about the status of its development, then a recent comment from director Naoki Hamaguchi might bring you peace of mind. We recently interviewed Hamaguchi-san and asked how the third game is progressing, and to our surprise, he confirmed that he's already completed over 40 playthroughs. That's quite an accomplishment, but we imagine it's probably necessary to ensure the experience works as intended and doesn't contain any nasty surprises, like bugs and stuff, And like by 40 playthroughs, I imagine that like someone on Twitter said that you can play Rebirth from start to finish in just 15 hours, right? And that's probably not it. That's not it, because if you're the game's director, you need to ensure that the game is polished from start to finish, and all the sections in between. Like, you can't just be like, oh, okay, the main story is good, so I'm putting it out there, and I don't care about any of the middle stuff. It doesn't work like that. You need to make sure that every single thing is good. Every single thing is good, like the mini games, the side quests, the sound, the music, the audio. I don't know what else, but if you're the games director, you need to ensure that the quality of the product you're putting out there, because it has his name under it, right? He's the director, so he's going to be the first person people go to. Like, for example, with 15, everyone said that Tabata-san, Hajime Tabata, did a poor job, and that's why he was eventually sacked from Square Enix, right? So with this one, it's Naoki Hamaguchi, and let's not forget that the director of Remake was Tetsuya Nomura, but he stepped down because they trusted Naoki Hamaguchi, and based on the work he did on Rebirth, it was good of them to trust Hamaguchi. So I imagine that he's not leaving anything to chance, right? So when he says over 40 playthroughs, it means that he's playing it over and over and over again. He's playing this section over again, that section over again. Every single side quest, every single hidden mission, everything to make sure that it's as good as possible, and that the quality is up there, and that there's no bugs, no glitches, nothing. So anyway, here's what he had to say. We're very excited about how the game is currently progressing. I have already completed over 40 playthroughs. I can't wait for as many people as possible to experience the game for themselves, and myself and the team are working hard to ensure we can create an unforgettable gameplay experience. There's no release date for the third entry yet, and we still don't even know its full title. Yeah, that's a good thing. I mean, that's not a good thing. That's something, right? We finally want to stop calling it Part 3. Like, please give us he should at least give us its title, right? But I can imagine they want to put it in the big announcement, make the big name drop, in June. Anyway, we're confident an announcement can't be too far off at this point. In fact, when questioned about the short gap between the release of Remake and Rebirth on Switch 2, Hamaguchi-san may have subtly hinted at the idea of closing the trilogy fairly soon after, maintaining a steady cadence of launches to tell the overarching story. With large-scale titles like this one, it's common for a long gap to exist between the first and second installments. However, because they were ports, we decided we could deliver them without leaving much of a gap. We want to capitalize on this cadence and moment to tie the experiences together without any gaps, from Remake to Rebirth to finally the third installment that lies beyond them. Our full interview with Hamaguchi-san is available now, so be sure to check it out for more interesting tidbits of information from the Remake trilogy's direct. Oh, smart! So they took this little section of the interview to make another smaller story, thinking it would be good. Okay, so we'll go over this interview as well, and another couple of interviews that I've isolated, which seem to be really, really good. All right, let's check out this one. But this one takes a quote from Nintendo Live. So honestly, I don't think it would be it doesn't really add anything to it. All right, let's close this one. What about this one? Reveals how the game was tweaked for Switch 2. Well, check out this one. All right, let's look at this one. Let's see what he had to say to Nintendo Live overall, And then we'll close with some of my ideas and some of the things I think are going to happen. Feature. It's rare for me to make downtime. Naoki Hamaguchi talks Final Fantasy VII's packed and eventful development. Rebirth is significantly different. Mere months after the launch of Final Fantasy VII Remake integrated on Switch 2, Square Enix is following up with a port of its sequel, Rebirth, in June. It's an impressive accomplishment given that the development team is also knee-deep in producing the third and final entry in the trilogy. The currently untitled game has yet to receive a firm release date, but according to director Naoki Hamaguchi, work is progressing very well. This is just one of several topics we touched on in our recent interview with Hamaguchi-san, who kindly took time from his schedule to answer questions ahead of Rebirth's launch. We discussed why Rebirth is launching so soon after Remake, how he relaxes during his downtime, or to be more precise, doesn't, and which first-party Nintendo game he's particularly excited for in the months ahead. How has development gone for Final Fantasy Rebirth on Switch 2? Were you working on this alongside Remake? Truthfully, from the moment we launched the Switch 2 version of Remake, the only thing I was thinking about was how to turn these other launches into a reality. This is because it wouldn't be fair to the players if the platforms were split part way through, given how this project was designed to be a trilogy. So rather than saying we developed Rebirth in parallel, it's more accurate to say that we were operating with the assumption that we'll continue this path forward from the moment Remake proved to be viable on the Switch 2. Of course, this doesn't mean we were developing two entire titles simultaneously. However, the optimization insights we gained from Remake and our growing understanding of the Switch 2 hardware were fed back into Rebirth from a fairly early stage. As a result, Remake and Rebirth ended up releasing on the Switch 2 within a relatively short time span. He's talking as if Rebirth is already out. It's not out yet. Anyway. This wasn't because we prioritized speed, but rather it was a decision driven by our top priority of avoiding a fragmented experience. If only that was a decision on the PS5, but anyway. How did you find the transition from the more linear gameplay in Remake to the more open-ended structure in Rebirth? The transition from Remake to Rebirth was essentially the accumulation of adjustments focused on answering one question. How do we make this work? Because Rebirth features large-scale fields with heavy processing loads on rendering and streaming, it couldn't be ported to the Switch 2 as is. That led us to take a step back and reassess things, from our approach to rendering techniques to lighting and background streaming. Streaming? We were especially keen on ensuring that switching between handheld and docked modes never made players feel like they were playing a different game. We prioritized stability and consistency of experience, exploring sensible solutions while keeping how games were played on the Switch 2 in mind. Through that process, we gained a very clear sense that an open-world experience of this scale can truly work across different environments. That realization isn't limited to Rebirth. It serves as a major source of validation for us as we take this series to its finish line as a trilogy. Okay, this is an interesting quote. It serves as a major source of validation for it. So, does that mean to say that Part 3 will also have an open world, with a high wind and all that? I'm going to keep that, a major source of validation for us. It's not limited to Rebirth. Interesting. Okay. With Remake, you've mentioned that lighting was crucial to ensuring the game looks so good on Switch 2. Was this the same for Rebirth, or did the open world structure require a different approach? Lighting is an important element in Rebirth, as it was in Remake. However, because Rebirth adopts an open world structure with a much larger field scale, it's a title where the amount of information being rendered at any given moment is higher. As a result, rather than making significant changes to lighting in isolation, our approach focused more on how to balance the overall rendering load. The use of DLSS was indispensable in that. He goes into more technical stuff here. DLSS was indispensable in that regard, and I'm going to skim a bit through it because if you're not familiar, and I'm really not familiar with it too much either, so the use of DLSS was indispensable in that regard and was readopted in Rebirth as it was in Remake. Neither of their modes relies on fixed resolutions and is instead designed based on dynamic resolution. In handheld mode, the internal resolution ranges between a maximum of and minimum of in docked mode ranges between a As for the compatibility between DLSS and head rendering, which was a topic of discussion with Remake, for Rebirth we took a slightly different approach. We didn't fundamentally change the rendering technique itself and applied subtle blur adjustments based on hair direction and density, aiming for the most natural balance. See, I mean, I understand that some people are interested in all this, but honestly, it just goes so deep into analysis, and it's it's a little bit strange to me that so many people within the community are interested in this. It's like, why do I care? Like, why do I care? What's the analysis of why should I be interested in DLSS and all that? Just as long as the game looks good and plays well and performs well, which admittedly, on Switch 2 it doesn't, but it's understandable because the Switch 2 is a more limited device compared to the PS5 and the Xbox, which any dope can understand that, right? So it takes a little bit longer to render the environments, especially in the open world, and that's pretty much all you need to know. Speaking of open world, did the larger scale of Rebirth cause any development headaches on Switch 2? What would you say was the biggest challenge? The shift to an open world means the scale of the world in Rebirth is significantly different. This difference became the greatest challenge for the Switch 2's port. For Remake, we were able to maintain 30 frames per second through adjustments to post effects and fog, but because Rebirth dramatically increases the number of rendered meshes, we couldn't implement the same thinking. For this reason, the background models themselves were optimized specifically for the Switch 2 in the port. We didn't simply reduce the polygon counts, we made adjustments to the overall game structure by redesigning from the LOD, level of detail. Yeah, see, we also adjusted the scale at which background level of detail switch from the overall scene, ensuring the processing load wouldn't spike suddenly even as draw distances increased. On top of that, we addressed these issues by identifying the conditions where processing loads tended to concentrate, determining cutoff points or minimizing rendering. Okay, look, without going into spoilers, do you have a favorite scene or gameplay segment from Birth that you'd like to highlight for players? I think the minigames pair exceptionally well with the Switch 2 because they can be played in short sessions. They give rise to experiences that draw players in before they even realize it. Take Queen's Blood, for example. What starts as just one match flows into another. You think you'll make a quick tweak to your deck, but you end up continuing to play. Picking up the game in handheld mode starts on an organic chain of play sessions. Okay, we don't have long to go. How do you find the balance between extending the story of FF VII into 3 games while staying faithful to the original vision? Interesting question. The greatest challenge was thoughtfully evaluating, title by title, how far to push nostalgia and innovation respectively so they could work in balance. For players familiar with the original game, I think what matters goes beyond the story arc itself. It's the relationships between the characters and the emotions they felt upon discovering this world. Those are elements we can't afford to treat lightly. At the same time, for players discovering FF VII today, we need to update the presentation and design to align with modern sensibilities. Otherwise, the experience itself simply wouldn't resonate. For this reason, we adopted modern approaches to visual expression while preserving the emotional core and character relationships that were beloved by many in the original game. Rather than framing this as a simple binary of whether to preserve and change something, we've continuously reevaluated how to interpret these notions of nostalgia and innovation and how to express them. As we've expanded the story as a trilogy, that thinking has remained consistent. That's our approach to making the Final Fantasy VII Remake series as a whole. Interesting. So, he essentially says that we keep the core story and the characters and the relationships between them, and we just add little, modern tweaks here and there to make it feel approachable for the audiences of today. Like how they use the PHS, which is like mobile phone or smart devices. Because back then the PHS was just a big mobile device that we had, or stuff like that. They're adding tweaks. They're not making it too much. They're not adding too much, but they're making sure that the additions that they make don't feel out of place. So yeah, I like that response. The emotion that they felt upon discovering this world. Yeah, I can understand that, because in the original game you may have gone to an area, but you didn't actually get to see how the characters would respond to that area. Like, for example, my mind goes to the Mithril mine and how Barrett told the rest of the party what goes on in there, and the story of it, and how when Shinra came in and they came into power and they started and the Marco energy came into play, people stopped relying on Mithril mining for their living, and all of that. But yeah, those sort of tweaks are very interesting in the modern the remake. Rebirth is launching on Switch 2 just 5 months after Remake. What was the approach behind this, and does it feel like the right move? The short span between releases was a deliberate choice, with View, Remake, and Rebirth not as complete. I think we just saw this, but as an experience unfolding within a single journey that follows one another. From the earliest stages of the remake project, each installment was designed not to repeat the same experience, but to progressively expand the scale of gameplay. So, really? Progressively expand? So, part 3 is going to expand even further. Like, part 3, you're going to have a whole world. Wow. I'm starting to think the part 3 might have an even bigger map. And, like, by considering like games like Crimson Desert, it is possible to create an even bigger map which you can explore via airship, but it will take a lot. Like it is possible for them to create this huge map, this huge field, this huge area for you to explore, but honestly it would be insane, right? Like the stuff they'd have to show would be insane. Remake focused on an experience that engages deeply with story and characters, while Rebirth continued that path and linked even further into the sensation of journey through the world. So what will part 3 lean into is the question. With large-scale titles like this one, it's common for a long gap to exist between the first and second installments. However, because they were ports, we decided we could deliver them without leaving much of a gap. That makes sense. We want to capitalize on this cadence and moment to tie the experiences together without any gaps, from remake to rebirth to finally the third installment that lies beyond them. So here's what I'm thinking. Can you imagine that, like, for rebirth, it's a crazy idea, but can you imagine that maybe for rebirth they used a smaller section? It's crazy. It's crazy, and just talking about it gets me excited. A smaller section of an even bigger map. It makes sense, and it could have been an even bigger map that was already in development, right? They were probably planning it from like the time that they made the game, and they were like, you know what, if we're going to make Final Fantasy VII, we got to go big, but it's going to take a lot of time. So what we're going to do is we're going to separate the game into 3 pieces, and in the first game we're just going to give them like Midgar, just so they can play around in the game. In the second game we're going to give them just these parts of the overall map, and even that might blow their mind. And for the third game, we'll give them everything. We'll give them everything we've been working on for the past decade. So, like, can you imagine that what we got in the second game, what we got in Rebirth, was maybe just a small part of the overall world map, which does make sense. And they could be working on this. Honestly, they may have been working on it. They may have put an emphasis on the parts that needed to be ready for Rebirth, like Junon and Corel and Costa del Sol and all those areas, right? But in honesty, in all full honesty, it does make sense. It does make sense, because if they wanted a huge open world, like, because there's still a big part of the map that we have not explored, like the northern continent, like the Wu-Tri and Rocket Town, and there's Medial, there's other parts of the world that we haven't explored, right? So maybe they just said to themselves, and who knows, maybe there'll be other parts that they can add in, and they could be like, go there, you can explore there, we're adding this, and it could be a natural addition, not addiction. It could be a natural addition, right? So they could be like, for Rebirth, we're giving you like, I don't know, maybe 40% of the world, of the actual world map we're working on. And then for part 3, you're going to get the full thing, and it's going to blow your mind, and you can run around and explore and find things and do whatever you want, You're going to have the high wind, and you can go wherever you want. And we're going to be like, they're going to see, and if it took 300 hours to complete Rebirth, it's going to take like 600. It's a crazy idea, I know, but they could, honestly, they could have been working, because we're thinking that, we're thinking in our own minds that development for part 3 started in like 2000, at the end, or maybe a year before Rebirth came out. Or maybe they had some ideas for part 3 and they just started implementing them a little bit before Rebirth came out. But that's a bit of a limited way of thinking. What if they had been planning this as a bigger picture? What if they were like, we have this goal, and from that goal, we're going to cut out chunks and deliver them as time goes by, you know? What if they're like, all right, they give them this smaller piece for remake and this smaller piece for rebirth and give them the whole thing at the end of it? So like maybe they could be creating this whole world for part 3. Maybe that was their end goal, to create part 3, and that could have been giving us smaller parts throughout the years just to, just to fill in the gaps. I'm just saying that the map of part 3 could be something that they have been working on for the past decade. It makes sense. It makes sense. And that's honestly not even the part that I was excited about. That just popped into my mind while reading this interview. We decided we could deliver them without leaving much of a gap. We want to capitalize on the cadence and moment to tie the experiences together without any gaps from Remake to Rebirth. When we spoke, you mentioned that the development of the third game was progressing well. You had finalized the story and begun working on the core gameplay. Without going into too much detail, can you provide an update on the game's progress? We're very excited about how the game is currently progressing. I've already completed over 40 full playthroughs. I can't wait for as many people as possible to experience the game for themselves, and myself and the team are working hard to ensure we can create an unforgettable gameplay experience. You must be so busy overseeing such an ambitious project. What do you do to relax during your downtime? To be honest, it's rare for me to make downtime with the intentional goal of relaxing. I play games and watch films, but sometimes I'm not even sure whether I'm purely enjoying them or engaging with them as part of my own creative process. As a way of clearing my head, I've made it a habit to get off the train a few stops early and walk for about 30 minutes on the way home. While walking, my thoughts tend to connect in unexpected ways, and I'm able to make sense of things as a result. It's also good for my physical health. That's actually really healthy. It's good to walk because, I've noticed it even in myself that, when you walk, you're able to, and you don't have any other distractions, your mind just has the time to sort itself out, and it's good for inspiration as well. I don't know what it is, what sort of chemicals start working up there, but it helps with, for me personally, it helps me come up with ideas and stuff like that. So if I'm looking to get inspired, I just go out for a walk. Are there any Switch 2 games you've been playing recently, or perhaps any that you're looking forward to playing in the future? Truthfully, the refinement work for the third installment has been ramping up, and I haven't been able to spend time with the Switch 2 after Donkey Kong Bonanza. That said, there are a few titles that have piqued my interest that I've kept myself in the loop for. Among them, Splatoon Raid. Well, obviously he's going to mention a Nintendo game, right? Because he's talking to Nintendo. Has particularly caught my attention. I'm interested in how it leverages an existing IP while expanding the game design itself, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it'll balance its action gameplay and field design from the perspective of a game designer. As you look ahead to the conclusion of the remake trilogy, how does it feel to bring such a significant chapter of your life to a close? When I look back, the finish line of this project felt unimaginably far away when it first began, but now it feels like time has flown by surprisingly quickly, partly because our days in development were so packed and eventful. For me, Final Fantasy VII is a truly special title that I've deeply admired even as a creator. Because of that, I've always carried the belief that this remake series must live up to the expectations of fans who have continued to show their love for FF VII and honor the efforts of my fellow creators who have run alongside me up until this point. It's awesome that he shows that respect, both to the game and to the people who came before him and actually developed the original title, like Yoshinori Kitase, like Tetsuya Nomura, like Kazushige Nojima, like all of those legendary people, like Nobuo Uematsu, right? Even people who aren't with Square Enix anymore, like oh come on, Shinji Hashimoto, or what's his name? Come on, I want to say it. Creator of Final Fantasy, Hironobu Sakaguchi. That's the one I'm talking about. Like all these people, he knows, he understands the weight of not just the series, but this game in particular, and he wants to do it justice. So he wants it to be one of the biggest games out there, and you could tell because he was disappointed when it didn't win any games at the 2024 Game Awards. I myself have been involved with this project for over 10 years, but with this final installment, I feel a deep certainty that we'll be able to deliver an experience that'll make people think, I'm glad I stayed with the series until the end. Love the confidence. That's something I feel in my heart. For the many fans who have supported us over this long journey, I sincerely hope that the time you've spent following this story to its conclusion will stay with you as something to cherish. My wish, from the bottom of my heart, is that we deliver a finale that's worthy of that. Damn, you can feel the weight in his words and that final statement. Like, this paragraph alone makes me feel that the last game is going to be epic, and it's going to be everything that we want and everything that we've been hoping for, and it's totally worth the wait. Like, I could easily wait. That being said, I don't think we're going to have to wait that long, I don't think that we're going to have to wait that long, because he says that he's played the game over like 40 times already, right? He's done over 40 playthroughs, and now they're in the refinement process. Like, they're fixing out bugs. They're doing everything. Like, maybe they're doing a few voiceovers here, fixing up a few voiceovers here and there. But honestly, and with the announcement that Final Fantasy XIV 8.0, what's it called, Evercold, I think, is coming out in January. Honestly, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this with full confidence. Are we looking at a 2026 release date for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3? Could it come out this year? Like, I know that we've been waiting a long time for it, but they've had all the time in the world to deliver it, to develop it. They've had all the time in the world to fix it. They want it to come out on all platforms. Sorry, I've got to sneeze. Okay, we don't have to sneeze. And they've been going on full throttle for who knows how long. I don't know, at least 4 years now, at least 3 years now, since 2023. But even before that, they may have developed certain assets for it. So I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of optimism here. They've made the game. They're just optimizing it now. They're just, fixing the bugs. That can be a lengthy process, The game's nowhere near going gold just yet, but they're in the final stretch. So I'm thinking maybe that final stretch isn't too long, Maybe it's not too stretchy. So we'll have to wait another month and 3 days to see, but I'm cautiously optimistic, because there's people out there saying we're going to get this in July 2027. No. Like, he's telling us, and he's starting to hype people up. The game is done. The development is done. They're just fixing bugs. So, I mean, could you imagine the hype if he comes out? Like, how much hype would he create if he comes out at Summer Games Fest, drops a trailer, and says, okay, you're getting this in December on all platforms? Like, could you imagine the hype? Could you imagine what that'll do to the community? To the global community? Like, everyone, first of all, everyone will love Hamaguchi, and second of all, everyone will be like, Final Fantasy. Like, the entire gaming community will be in an uproar. I think they've understood from their mistakes, from their previous mistakes, that they don't want to announce a game if it's not ready, and they want to announce it as soon as possible. They don't want to keep people waiting anymore, especially this team. And I don't know. I think that we're going to get it way before we think. They've kept us. They've been on radio silence for a long time, and this team doesn't stay on radio silence. So I don't know. I'm thinking he might go on stage along with Kitase or someone like that, and we might actually get this year. We might get it for Christmas, and that would be an incredible Christmas period. Anyway, that was my theory, and I think after reading this interview, I think that's enough for now. So we're going to shut it down. So I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. Do you reckon it's possible that we could get Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 in 2026, late 2026? I see it as a high possibility, but I don't know. I'd be interested to hear some other thoughts about, if you think it's not possible, why? If you think it's not in the realm of reality, if you think I'm exaggerating, why is that? Because I reckon we're gonna get it. But anyway, all right, that's enough of that. Let's shut it down, and let's move on to other things. All right, be right back.